Late summer, 1944. In the warm black waters off the Romanian coast, the Black Sea rolled under a moon hidden behind drifting clouds. Far below the surface, a small group of Axis submarines cruised in slow formation, their hulls brushing the thermocline where cold layers concealed their movement. German U-boats U-9 and U-19, joined by Romania's lone underwater hunter Delfinul, moved with the confidence of veterans who had stalked these waters for years. To their captains, the night felt safe. The Soviets had never mastered anti-submarine warfare, and the Black Sea had long been a hunting ground where Axis submarines slipped in and out of harbors unseen, sinking transports and supply barges at will. In the darkness, the Wolfpack believed it still reigned. What they did not know was that the Black Sea beneath them had changed. Weeks earlier, Soviet anti-submarine units had begun receiving equipment the Axis did not suspect existed in these waters. United States-built submarine chasers delivered quietly under Lend-Lease. Fast, compact, and packed with technology the Germans had never encountered here, the American SC-class vessels carried advanced sonar, high-frequency direction-finding gear, and radar sets that pierced the Black Sea night like invisible searchlights. They were not alone. United States-built Catalina flying boats had arrived as well, their radar arrays sweeping across the coastline, marking contacts before Axis ships ever realized they had been detected. For the first time in the war, Allied eyes, powered by American machinery, watched the Black Sea from above and below. To the German and Romanian commanders, the Soviet fleet had always been predictable. Its patrols were slow, blind, and disorganized. Its minesweepers stuck to shallow waters. Its destroyers lacked modern sonar. But the arrival of American equipment changed everything. Suddenly, convoys once considered easy prey were escorted by vessels that tracked radio bursts through clouds, plotted submarine bearings from dozens of miles away, and dropped depth charges with accuracy no Soviet unit had possessed before. The Axis Wolfpack had no idea the rules of the Black Sea had been rewritten. The strategic stakes were enormous. In 1944, the German army in Crimea depended entirely on supply lines moving across the sea from Romania to the peninsula. Ammunition, fuel, reinforcements, and evacuation routes all passed through the ports of Constanța and Sevastopol. Any disruption meant collapse, but the Wolfpack had always ensured that Soviet attempts to threaten these routes were costly. Now, as front lines shifted and Soviet armies reclaimed the coastline inch by inch, the Germans leaned harder on their submarines than ever before. They believed the underwater route would remain secure. They did not know that American sonar would soon turn the sea itself against them. The American-built submarine chasers that entered the Black Sea were small compared to destroyers, but their size made them perfect for these waters. Each one bristled with anti-submarine weapons depth charges on racks, mousetrap rocket projectors mounted forward, and high-power sonar domes slung beneath their hulls. Their crews had trained relentlessly with American naval advisors, learning how to triangulate submarine positions, how to decipher disguised radio transmissions, and how to use sonar frequencies that pierced thermal layers. They could detect a submerged submarine long before it came within torpedo range. They were hunters designed for one purpose: to end the Wolfpack. On the night the operation began, the sea was nearly windless. That stillness made sonar more effective, letting the high-pitched pulses travel farther and clearer through the water. On board one of the American-built chasers, a trained Soviet sonar operator listened as the first echoes returned. A faint, metallic shape appeared deep beneath the surface, its profile unmistakable. A submarine was moving at steady speed just above the seafloor. The operator adjusted gain levels, watching the screen brighten with each ping. It was not a false contact. It was not a drifting wreck. It was a living U-boat, cutting silently through the Black Sea. The order to tighten the net went out instantly through secure channels. Other American-built craft altered course, fanning outward to box in the contact. They kept a wide formation at first, letting sonar beams cross and converge on the same point. Every few minutes, high-frequency direction-finding receivers caught short, coded axis transmissions. Each burst of radio static betrayed another piece of the Wolfpack's position. The submarines thought they were whispering into the night. They did not know American HF, divided by DF gear, could catch those whispers from dozens of miles away. Far below them, the Wolfpack moved as if nothing had changed. The German commanders believed thermal layers hid them from detection. They believed Soviet units lacked advanced sonar. They believed that by hugging the sea floor and reducing speed, they could mask their presence even from patrol craft sweeping overhead. The Black Sea had taught them these tricks across years of successful operations, but the American systems tracking them did not care about old assumptions. They were calibrated to penetrate the thermocline, to illuminate silent running approaches, and to distinguish submarine propellers from merchant screws by tonal signature alone. Inside the chaser's sonar room, the echoes grew sharper. The operator tracked every movement, small corrections in heading, slight dips in depth, subtle speed reductions. The submarine was adjusting course to intercept traffic lanes near the Crimean coast, unaware that its own movements were being plotted in real time. The operator's pulse quickened. This was not a training exercise. This was the moment the Wolfpack would learn it was no longer the predator. As the target drew closer to the center of the formation, the chasers lowered their speed to reduce engine noise. Their hulls glided across the water like shadows, leaving barely a ripple. Overhead, clouds parted long enough for faint moonlight to illuminate a calm surface. Beneath it, the submarine continued forward, blind to the danger above. The sea felt peaceful, almost gentle. But for the sonar teams listening through their headphones, the world had narrowed to one sound, the rhythmic beat of propellers slowly growing louder. A second contact emerged on sonar, another submarine, trailing farther behind the first. This confirmed the presence of the Wolfpack. The Axis believed that spreading out provided safety, each boat watching the other's approach, each ready to react if Soviet units appeared. But they did not know that American sonar triangulation could track multiple contacts simultaneously. For the first time in the Black Sea, the Wolfpack was being stalked, not by destroyers or air patrols, but by a network of hunters connected through American technology. The chasers adjusted their formation, creating a funnel of sonar coverage. If the submarines continued on course, they would pass directly into the center of the trap. The crews on the American-built vessels moved with calm, practiced precision. Depth charges were armed. Release racks were inspected. Mousetrap launchers were set to firing depth. Every man knew the stakes. Ending the Wolfpack would secure entire coastlines, sever German supply, and isolate Axis garrisons across the region. The Black Sea held the key to a whole front of the war, and tonight the key would turn. The first Axis submarine descended slightly, likely adjusting ballast for silent running. But the move only made it clearer to the hunters. The sonar beams picked up the shift instantly, mapping the submarine's depth change with crisp echoes. The hunters now had perfect range, bearing, and depth. Above the waves, their engines throttled down even farther. The ships drifted into the final approach. Inside the submarine, the German crew had no idea that sonar pulses were bouncing off their hull like invisible lightning. They believed they were undetected. They believed the night protected them. And so, they pressed on toward the shipping lanes, unaware that every meter they traveled brought them deeper into the jaws of an unseen enemy. The hunters moved into position. Sonar screens glowed with sharply defined traces. The submarine's silhouette grew brighter with each ping. The crew of the lead chaser prepared for the first attack run. In the darkness of the Black Sea, the Wolfpack drifted forward, unknowingly entering the corridor from which it would never return. The trap was ready to spring. The first attack run began in darkness thicker than ink. The American-built submarine chaser eased into position above the contact, sonar pings rising in urgency as the submarine drifted beneath the ship's keel. The water around the hull trembled with the low, rhythmic thud of screws coming straight toward them. In the aft deck, depth charge crews worked silently under red lamps, feeling the hum of the engines through their boots as they aligned the charges on their release rails. The sea smelled of oil and salt. Waves rolled quietly past. Then, with a sudden metallic clatter, the first depth charge dropped away and vanished into the water. The ocean swallowed it instantly, then swallowed the next and the next, each sinking in a staggered pattern designed to create a spreading cone of destruction. For several seconds, there was silence. Then the first explosion tore through the deep. Water shot upward in a trembling pillar. A second blast followed, then a third, each shock wave rolling across the chaser's hull like distant thunder. Far below, the submarine's crew felt the concussions slam into their hull with terrifying force. Metal screamed under pressure, rivets shuddered in their sockets. Bulkheads bent inward like bowed ribs. The hunters above had struck their first blow. Inside the submarine, chaos erupted. The lights flickered. Gauges burst. Electrical circuits shorted in showers of sparks. The crew scrambled through the tilting passageways, trying to isolate flooding compartments as seawater gushed through torn seams. The commander ordered the submarine to dive deeper standard procedure for escaping airborne or surface depth charges. But the deeper they went, the stronger the pressure became, and the more violently the hull groaned. Sonar pulses from above grew louder, sharper, more frequent. They were not escaping. They were being tracked. Above them, the hunters were already turning for a second run. Their sonar operators watched the contact marker stutter, dip, and wobble as the submarine descended into the deeper, colder layers of the Black Sea. Each movement revealed more stress in the submarine's hull, more loss of control, more frantic adjustments. The chaser's captain ordered the ship into a tight turn, lining up for another perfect drop. Depth charge crews reloaded and prepared the next pattern. The Wolfpack boats had always hunted Soviet ships like this, making calculated approaches and firing torpedoes from shadows. But tonight, the roles were reversed. The hunters had become the hunted. The second barrage struck with brutal precision. As the American-built chaser passed overhead again, an entire row of depth charges plunged into the sea. This time, the explosions detonated even closer to the submarine's hull. The pressure waves smashed through compartments with bone-shaking force, extinguishing lights, overturning equipment, and driving the submarine toward the seafloor. The German U-boat could no longer maintain depth. Its rudder jammed. Its pumps failed. Its batteries cracked under the strain. The crew fought to stabilize the vessel, but the Black Sea had already claimed dominance. The submarine began to spiral downward, helplessly dragged by gravity and flooding. At last, the hull reached its breaking point. A catastrophic implosion sounded like a muted thunderclap, deep, heavy, and final. The pressure of the Black Sea crushed the submarine like a steel can, extinguishing every life aboard in a split second. On the surface, a faint tremor rippled outward, barely disturbing the waves. Sonar screens suddenly went blank, the contact disappearing into silence. The first boat of the Black Sea Wolfpack was gone. Hundreds of meters away, another American-equipped chaser tracked a second contact. This submarine, German U-19, had been trailing the first boat, positioned to deliver torpedoes into Soviet coastal traffic. It never expected aircraft to be hunting in these waters, but tonight, one of the American-supplied Catalina flying boats soared through shifting clouds, scanning the surface with radar beams that sliced through darkness. At first, the radar return seemed faint, then grew clearer, reflecting the narrow shadow of a periscope or snorkel cutting the water's surface. The Catalina banked sharply, engines humming, as its navigator marked the target's exact location. Below, U-19's crew heard the distant thrum of aircraft engines. They believed it was Soviet and posed no immediate threat. They were wrong. The Catalina descended into attack position, dropping a string of depth charges in a tight arc ahead of the submarine's predicted path. The explosions rocked the surface, sending fountains of water skyward. U-19 was forced to dive, but sonar beams from the American-equipped subchasers already racing toward the scene locked onto the boat's descent. The Wolfpack submarine accelerated into the deep. but the hunters had triangulated its course with mathematical precision. As U-19 dove deeper, a second American-built chaser reached optimal range. Its sonar operator adjusted frequency to penetrate the thermal layer the German crew relied on for concealment. The echo returned with unmistakable clarity. The ship angled into its attack run, bow dipping slightly as engines throttled forward. Death in these waters did not come from torpedoes or guns. It came from the sky above and the sea around, from pressure waves and collapsing steel. The depth charge barrage hit U-19 with devastating effect. Explosions tore open ballast tanks, ruptured forward compartments, and forced the submarine to surface involuntarily, blowing water and debris from its conning tower as it broke through the waves. Its hull was mangled, its crew disoriented. Before the Germans could recover, the chaser closed in, circling like a predator. More depth charges rolled into the sea around the floundering U-boat. The final blast sent it plunging beneath the surface stern first, leaving only a spreading patch of oil and scattered wreckage behind. The loss of Union and U-19 in rapid succession shocked the remaining Axis crews. The Black Sea, once a domain of stealth and confidence, had become treacherous. Romania's last operational submarine, Delfinul, received urgent orders to reposition and avoid contact. But the very act of transmitting those orders revealed its approximate location. American HF, divided by DF units, intercepted the short-coded burst and fixed a bearing. Catalina aircraft swept overhead, narrowing the search zone. American-built hunters fanned out once more, plotting the submarine's path using intersecting sonar arcs. Delfinul's captain attempted every known evasion tactic. He hugged the seabed, hoping mud and silt would distort sonar. He cut engines to reduce propeller noise. He drifted with currents, silent and still. But the Black Sea had already betrayed him. The thermocline layers he depended on were now illuminated by sonar frequencies designed to cut through environmental distortion. Within minutes, the hunters reacquired him. Delfinul could not run to deeper water. It did not exist in this part of the sea. The submarine had nowhere to go. The first attack run damaged Delfinul's bow and forward pumps. The second attack ruptured internal piping. Water streamed through ruptured valves. The submarine was forced to ascend, but rising meant death. The Romanian crew fought to control the flooding, but their instruments sputtered and failed under pressure. Delfinul surfaced briefly, but patrol craft were already closing in. With their hull compromised and no hope of escape, the crew scuttled their vessel near the coastline. The only Romanian submarine ever to operate in the Black Sea had been driven from combat forever. With the elimination of all three active boats, the Black Sea Wolfpack ceased to exist. Sonar operators on the American-built chasers swept the sea in widening arcs, listening for any sign of movement. There was none. Their screens remained empty, except for the echoes of distant shoals and drifting debris. Catalina aircraft circled overhead, but nothing living stirred below. For the first time in years, the Black Sea belonged entirely to the hunters. The strategic effects were immediate and catastrophic for the Axis. German supply lines to Crimea collapsed. Convoys carrying ammunition, fuel, and reinforcements from Constanza to Sevastopol halted overnight. Barges refused to sail. Tankers remained in harbor. The German 17th Army, stranded on the peninsula, found itself cut off with no way to retreat or resupply. Within weeks, its entire position began to unravel. Romania's naval power crumbled. Once proud destroyers and patrol craft retreated to port, unwilling to risk the deadly sonar sweeps. Constanza became a shadow of its former self, its piers lined with vessels that could no longer venture into open water. And as Soviet ground forces advanced, Romania, recognizing the hopelessness of continued Axis alliance, switched sides in August 1944, accelerating the collapse of Germany's southeastern front. In Berlin, disbelief turned to anger as reports filtered in. High command struggled to accept that an entire submarine force had been wiped out in weeks. They blamed mechanical failures, bad luck, inexperienced crews. But the truth was far simpler. American sonar, American HF divided by DF, American-built submarine chasers, and American-equipped Catalinas had turned the Black Sea into a trap from which no Axis submarine could escape. The Wolfpack had not been defeated in a single duel or by a single ship, but by a network of hunters whose sensors and coordination surpassed anything Germany had prepared for. In the months that followed, post-war analysis revealed that Operation Source's principles, stealth, detection, saturation, had been applied perfectly in the Black Sea. The combination of American equipment and Soviet geographic knowledge formed a kill chain so effective that not one Axis submarine survived. Historians would later remark that few naval battles ended so decisively, with so little warning and so complete a collapse. The Black Sea, once a sanctuary for hidden hunters, had become a graveyard filled with the twisted remains of submarines that never understood what was stalking them. The Wolfpack vanished, not through torpedoes or surface duels, but through the silent precision of sonar and the relentless patience of vessels designed specifically to hunt submarines down to the last echo. By the end of 1944, the sea was quiet. Supply routes remained severed. The shattered Axis fleets never recovered. And the Black Sea, once contested, dangerous, and unpredictable, had become a silent witness to a transformation that ended an entire era of submarine warfare in the region. It was the night when American-equipped hunters broke the last Wolfpack in the Black Sea, shattered Romania's naval power, and turned an entire sea from a battleground into a tomb.